Hey everybody, Liberty Music Ray here. Doing a video today. This one is covering, so to preface what this is about, there was a debate between Andrew Wilson and Candace Owens, and this is Warren Smith from Secret Scholarly Society here on YouTube. He was doing a analysis of, I guess, the debate in how, like, who he thought may or may not have won, that sort of stuff. And I guess there was like a little bit of blowback on his channel, but I just wanted to do a video on, maybe not, I wouldn't say what I'm doing here is like a rebuttal video as much as it is just constructive criticism, right? Um, and I think I don't, like I said, I don't have a problem with anybody here. Like Warren Smith, I think is a very intelligent person. Um, Andrew Wilson, to a degree, although I will say Andrew Wilson does seem to exhibit a lot of arrogance and hubris, especially during the debate. And I don't know if that's I don't know if that's more or less, maybe, I mean, it could be a lot of things. I mean, it could be like his addiction and his need to smoke uh makes him want to rush through the debate or whatever. Could be a lot of things, but um it I don't think it went well for him during the debate, and I'll explain that more when we get into the video. So, but yeah, like I said, this is more or less like a constructive criticism video. It's not like I'm not here to slam anybody or say anybody got destroyed or pretend like anybody's like a bad person because, they didn't have certain opinions or, whatever, right? So, all right, let's get into it.
Wilson is playing a very specific game. Most people will not even see it. This has nothing to do with how I feel about either of these people. If you block out the noise and examine only the logic, suddenly you can see it in a different light.
Between 0 to 100, what is the likelihood that you think Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk and killed him?
Based on the evidence right now, I don't know, I'd say 75, 85%.
Candace?
And then PBD turns to Candace, and this is the most important moment in the entire debate.
0%.
0%.
I'm at 0.
So
with what we've seen in terms of the evidence, I'm at 0%.
And that's the claim. She says there's a 0% chance. I mean, we're talking certainty here.
you're not even saying that he didn't even shoot Charlie Kirk and
Right.
kill him.
I would, if you said, was he involved that day, as
Right.
I have consistently said on my platform, I would say yes, he was. I don't know what role he played, but as the shooter, 0%.
If you're convinced there's a 0% chance, there must be some evidence of that beyond just, well, I think there's room for error.
Do you have any evidence for it?
For what? My percentage?
The fact that he didn't shoot and kill Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
I got excited. I was like, I'm going to learn something here because I want to figure this out. Based on the evidence she presents, I will change my mind.
We should go
fine.
over the actual
Okay,
evidence that
so
we feel.
The first reason that I think, and I think it's compelling evidence, is that Tyler Robinson's rifle was found near the crime scene.
That would be an example of material evidence. We have something we can actually point to. Now, you can claim there's more to it, and that's what Candace does with DNA. This gets into a really interesting debacle.
You could have DNA on something that you've touched. You could have DNA on something that you've never touched. And to get DNA degradation, they've looked at pieces, items 20, 40 years on that don't have degradation.
Right here, she admits that items 20, 40 years on do not have degradation. Logically, therefore, degradation of DNA cannot be used to measure time. Therefore, we cannot determine whether or not Tyler Robinson was the last person to touch the gun based on your claim.
Yet Tyler Robinson's prints, amongst 5+ other prints.
Just to pause right there. I mean, that's a fair claim in and of itself. I think a lot of people are mad at this video because they don't necessarily understand what it is that Warren's saying. Now, I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to make the argument for Candace in this respect, because it's like saying, well, if you needed something to make an argument, you could say potentially, well, hey, like, you guys are trying to like timestamp his possession of the firearm based on DNA, but there's DNA degradation, and DNA degradation isn't a representation of time, in terms of if he was the last person to touch the firearm or not, right? Now, I mean, does that mean that he's innocent completely? I don't think so. I mean, that could just also mean it's something like as simple as, maybe he used like a bleach wipe to wipe down the firearm, right? Like there's a lot of things that you could do. And when it comes to DNA degradation, I mean, even something as simple as like Dawn dish soap will damage DNA. So
Were the most degraded on that weapon.
Yeah, that doesn't actually give you any evidence in your corner for Tyler Robinson being a patsy.
Okay, there's more presence of somebody else's prints, and that could demonstrate that somebody is taking items from his house and putting it into
But it
various
also
places.
could demonstrate nothing.
yeah, so and this is actually a smooth move too. I mean the fact that she's even staying right here, which is like there are other DNA samples taken from the firearm that have little to no degradation on the firearm itself. And then I think, I'm not 100% sure here, but I think based on what I remember from the debate, I want to say there is an implication that there's a possibility that that guy's boyfriend maybe handled the firearm at some point, like that there's the possibility that his DNA was on the firearm as well. I don't know how true that is. I haven't really, like, I'll be honest, I haven't really kept up with the case, and I'll be the first to admit, like, I'm pretty sure, like, when it comes down to it, Candace Owens is probably the only person that is as familiar with the case as anybody else, right? Like, I look at Candace Owens and I'm like, holy crap, like, I mean, she's really on top of it. Like, she knows every single little, like, minor detail that most people would have, like, already tossed out the window, right? So, and, to be fair, I mean, that's her best friend, right? Like, I would hope, like, if somebody, you know, decided to climb a clock tower and end me, like, I would hope that, my friends would, like, be like, yeah, that's a little weird, and then, like, maybe look into it. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, like I said, I mean, that was her best friend, right? So, and they used to tour together and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, it's completely understandable. I mean, dude, I'm not even like on the side of Candace is 100% right. I mean, for all I know, this is like, you know, I think she's been like pregnant nonstop for like the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I mean, for all I know, this is like a hormone induced delusion. You know what I mean? I don't 100% know, but I will say that there are a lot of inconsistencies that she points out that are really like it does kind of point to maybe there is something more that we're not seeing, right? And that's not like, I'm not, like I said, I'm not here to discredit anybody. I'm not here to say anybody's right or wrong, right? Like, I don't know what happened. I'm more of a let's wait and see sort of person, like I'm waiting on the court stuff to come out, and then we can kind of see more from there, because I feel like at this point everything is just speculation, right? Um, and that's not me playing it safe. That's just kind of like over the years, like I've been looped into like some of the dumbest things, and just I feel like I've wasted my time, and it would have been like more productive to just wait and see rather than like obsess over something and then like waste all this time obsessing over a giant nothing burger, right? So, um, that's kind of why like I just don't really follow it. Like to me, it's kind of is this really where like you want to waste time, and especially if there's people that are more qualified, you know, in better informed than you are that are already on top of it, right? Like why get in the way of that, right? Um, you know, at least that's my opinion. So, but let's get back to it.
Thing.
Okay, I just described that for you, so I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you, so I'm going to move on from that.
This reminds me when I'm trying to debate someone about trans ideology, and they're trying to explain how a man can be a woman. This doesn't make sense. Can you explain it again? I can't understand it for you. I can only explain it to you. This science is very obvious, Warren. I don't know why people seem to think this is some gotcha.
The
I mean, to a degree it is, right? Like, especially, so at this point in the debate, I think anybody who's like smart enough to like see like what's happening from like a personality level, you can see clearly that Andrew Wilson is playing dumb, right? And the reason is because just as much as he's pointing to Candace Owens and he's saying, well, you're over here drip feeding information, you're over here carefully watching your words so like TPUSA doesn't sue you for defamation, you know, like you're very particular about your wording, you're very careful about what you say, you know, just as much as he is claiming that she is guilty of that, he's just as guilty of. And it's very obvious like when you watch this entire debate, it's you can kind of see it from both sides. Like you can even see where like Candace is basically like giving him enough rope to sort of like potentially hang himself from, right? Like that's kind of what she was doing. And here's the fun thing. And I'm gonna bring this up just as like a little short snippet for right now, but
Little did he know it wasn't a short snippet, but rather a long, haphazard explanation of his own opinion.
my point with this debate is that from Andrew Wilson's perspective, the reason I think and I feel like his entire approach was just a direct loss from the very beginning was because he came in from a position of a loss. And what I mean by that is whenever you go into a debate, you cannot so basically one thing that you have to understand about debates is that you really can't prove a negative, right? So like if I go into a debate and I'm like trying to prove that God doesn't exist, right? Like, and this is the most extreme example of this, right? Like I can't go into a debate and say God doesn't exist because I'm starting from the position that God already does exist. And now I am having to prove that through his existence, he does not exist. Right. Like, it's, you're coming at this from a perspective in which you're saying that there is a certain thing that can't exist without evidence of its existence in the first place, right? So it's like you're skipping a step in when it comes to this, when it comes to the hierarchy of like uh your position within the argument, right? Like typically the way that argument would start off is somebody says, well, I think God exists, right? And then you would start from the position of, well, if God does exist, you know, blah 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 blah, and then you would then pivot the argument to these are the reasons why I believe God does not exist. But the thing is that as is with an entity of like God, for instance, there's no physical form, there's no um there's no physical form, there's no, because this is like an entity of like a higher dimension, right? So there's no physical evidence that you would be able to point to be like God exists and or God does not exist, right? So, and ultimately at the end of the day, what it comes down to is a conspiracy. And when I say conspiracy, I'm not talking about like, what you would say to like somebody like Alex Jones to discredit him or anything like that, right? Like I'm using the word conspiracy like from the legal term, right? Like what a conspiracy is, right? Um and you can't, that's the thing with the conspiracy is there is no there is no physical form to a conspiracy. There's no evidence, there's no anything. It's more or less kind of like an intuitive like gut reaction, right? And this is what makes people like Alex Jones so successful, right? Because he doesn't have the onus of having to prove his own conspiracies. Time does that for him, right? Like um the famous saying, they're turning the freaking frogs gay, right? And everybody sat back and they were like, "Oh, well, that's nutball talk, like he's crazy, he's a schizo." And then what ended up happening, we found out that there are plastic companies that were basically using river and lake water to wash um, their plastics. And what was happening was these microplastics that are like a hormone disruptor were leaching into the water, and it was disrupting the hormones of these frogs, and it was turning them, because that's the thing with frogs is like they can, you know kind of potentially like fake swapping a gender, I guess. I don't think it actually works like on the reproductive side. I could be wrong. I didn't really um thoroughly investigate this claim, but you know I mean, I'm sure there's like some internet autist out there somewhere that knows the exacts of like what happens when a frog goes through that change. But anyways, the point is that eventually Alex Jones was proven right. And to be one of those people that like stands in the way of a conspiracy theorist, right? And saying that you can then prove the negative, which is proving that their conspiracy isn't real. I mean, that's an almost near impossible task, if not impossible. So because you're again, you're starting at the position that something actually does exist and something is happening, and then you're working backwards to prove that doesn't exist. So it's almost as if you're, by debating it, you're almost proving it does exist by default, right? So, all right, let's get back to it.
Entire basis for why you think that there's evidence for Tyler Robinson being the person that took the shot
Yeah.
is based off of a hearing under Utah 1102 rules, meaning that they are doing the exact same thing that I am doing.
That's a big moment. If we can't listen to anything that could be categorized as hearsay, we can't listen to your claim that someone in the French government told you about an attempted assassination plot, because that would be hearsay.
And what that means essentially is
I'm not even sure she really kind of made that argument. Um, I feel like her argument was more or less that so far everything that they have to work with is hearsay, right? And I mean, if you're coming at this, if you're coming at this from the perspective of like, well, we can't have this debate because everything is hearsay, well, guess what? Then this isn't even a debate, because literally everything that's being run on at this point is hearsay, right? So I understand, like, I don't know, I feel like maybe Warren had like a misunderstanding of this, because she's bringing up like the Utah State Court rules and regulations for like criminal preliminary examinations, right? But the thing is she's not saying that like, well, everything that's hearsay you just throw out, right? I think she's kind of actually saying the opposite, which is like, well, if you want to talk about hearsay and how it's immiscible, well, then we have to basically throw everything that we know out, because almost everything that we know is to some degree hearsay, right? Like, especially if you look at her sides of the argument, which is, you know, if you've paid attention to the whole thing with the steakhouse and Chick-fil-A and all this sort of, and the receipts and all that sort of stuff. I mean, none of that stuff's been like quote unquote verified, but to a degree, I mean, there's, and I would even go as far as to say that um, I think personally, I think there's enough inconsistencies in everything to warrant a critical level of questioning of what is actually happening. And it could very well be that Candace is 100% correct. It could be that, this Tyler Robinson is a patsy, I mean, and I'm sure you can build a train of logic to get to that assumption, right? But like I said, at this point, everything is an assumption. Even the speculation on what's currently happening within the court system is speculation, because nothing has happened yet. So you're literally having a debate over nothing, like zero information. They haven't even gone through the parts of the court where they weigh what is allowed in court and what is not allowed in court, right? Because again, like in court, like you can even use hearsay in court to make your argument. Like you can bring up people like witnesses to the stand that were like, you know, quote unquote, like they say they were present for whatever happened and that they had witnessed it. And just because they are a witness doesn't mean that it's not hearsay to a degree, right? Like you're relying on, you know, somebody submitting their opinion, and their opinion could even be wrong, right? Like, I mean, I've seen older cases where, people will jump in and they'll say, "Oh, I'm a witness, I was there, blah blah blah," and then they'll go to bat for the other person and try to pretend like, "Oh, that person wasn't even here. Here's their alibi," and then they'll just like make stuff up and try to cover for their friend. You know what I mean? So again, like you can't really trust like testimony 100%, but I mean, if you have other things to corroborate that testimony, then that's when you start building evidence, right? But as of right now, like I said, there is no evidence. So it's like trying to trying to trying to step forward and be like, well, we need hard evidence. And it's like, well, there is none. So, I mean, and you're having a debate based on the fact that there is no evidence, right? Which is kind of dumb, in my opinion, especially if you're trying to prove a negative and there's nothing solid to work with, right?
The people who are making the statements can just say, Patrick told me that he did this on Monday. Patrick's not here. And that is, they can allow that into the hearing. The entire preliminary hearing was hearsay.
Yeah, I'm fine with your inferences.
But no, you just literally said I couldn't do that. Yes, I can.
No, I didn't. I'm just saying from your inference, how do we get to Patsy?
This is how you got to Shooter.
This was not actually a debate. She's not trying to argue that her claim is stronger. She's simply trying to argue, hey, it's viable and it's okay for me to think.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the problem with this, is because Andrew Wilson put himself in the position of having to prove a negative, so she doesn't have to prove anything. Time is on her side. She can literally just sit there and run out the clock and say, well, I believe this is plausible, and because I believe this is plausible, then that means that I'm right and you're wrong. Like, if that's what you're having a debate over, right, is the plausibility of, could this thing happen, right? Like, And that's the dumbest part about this debate is, I mean, imagine imagine putting yourself in a position where you're going to lose $300,000 because, you know, uh you created a debate from a position of a loss right off the get-go, and then you show up, and then now you're having to argue the plausibility of a conspiracy, and whether or not it could have happened in a day and age where we just lived through this entire COVID thing, and now they have Dr. Fauci up on the stand who absolutely refuses to testify for any reason whatsoever, even though he's got like a blanket pardon that stretches out into the future. And I think we all know the reason why, right? Like it's pretty plausible to us to understand that like this dude probably faked a vaccine and went out there and used government subsidies to rake in millions of dollars for him and his political friends, right? And I think a lot of people are very upset about that, especially because, the vaccine, like there's no um, justice on the other end for people that were adversely affected by the vaccine, right? So, but again, I mean, let's continue on with the video here, and I like I said, I think the majority of his critiques are just misunderstandings.
I agree.
But the entire substance of your argument is that people can't infer off of evidence. That's
No,
what you're saying
it's
to
not.
me.
And somehow she spins this into Andrew saying people can't infer off of evidence, which is the opposite of what I thought he was saying. I thought he was asking you for the evidence that you're using to infer your conclusion.
I'm telling you that.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem is that there is no evidence at this point. Everything is speculation, as I said, right? And I think even if you sat down and you asked Candace Owens herself whether or not what she's saying is speculation, I think she would agree with you that it is speculation, because at no point in time have I seen her like I've seen her be very careful in her language, right? I've seen her say things like, like the part where she was talking about um Erica being complicit and that sort of stuff. And she never outright comes out and says, well, she's complicit in this thing. She comes out and says, oh, she's just complicit. She's complicit in this person, possibly potentially being falsely accused of a crime, or she's you know and even take a step further back than that. I mean, she's literally just complicit in the entire grand scheme of you know uh this entire situation, really. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know how else to say it. I mean, like, you could look at it from so many different perspectives, right? And like I said, I'm of the position that, like, let's just wait and see, you know. But I'm just saying, when it comes down to like potential like perspective from where she's coming from, it could be any number of degrees, right? And to make for them to do the same thing is very ironic, right? It's like you're going to come and sit down, and you're the one that's going to be making inferences that she said X, Y, and Z because of her vague wording in how she talks about the subject matter on her show, right? Like, now you're pushing and basically putting words in her mouth and saying, well, you said this, and this is the common inference of this, right? And this is why it's so important, like especially in debates, to make sure that like whatever lingo or wording you're using, right, to make sure that you and the other person are on the same page, right? That you both have the same understanding and the same, whether that's the colloquial understanding of a word, or if that's just, like a slang understanding of a word, or like whatever it is, right? That's why it's so important to work out the wording, and the semantics of a debate as well.
is what the entire hearing allowed for. So the evidence that he is
Great, but
describing,
we're asking you
that
now.
he is using to argue his case, is all based on inference.
See, and this is part of it, is like, this is what's so annoying, is he's not even really taking this conversation even somewhat seriously, right? And you would think he would, seeing as how there's like $300,000 on the line, right? Like, if I had to show up, to a debate, and I was betting $300,000 of my money, I think I would be concerned, right? And I would be paying attention to what she has to say, and I wouldn't be acting like an arrogant chump sitting back in the chair, you know, pretending that I can't hear whatever it is she's saying because, I'm so above it or whatever, like I would be carefully analyzing everything she said. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be twitching my foot and humming and just, acting with like such a great amount of hubris.
Not fact.
What? The court claims they have text messages in which he confesses. Pointing to that is not an inference. It's a fact. The court claims to have that.
Yeah, but I mean, so here's the thing. If you paid attention to the debate, the court isn't necessarily claiming that they have that information. They're just allowing other people to basically come in. And this is part of what I was saying earlier about the hearsay part, right? Like the court doesn't necessarily know at this point like what evidence is actual evidence and what is like insignificant to the trial coming, right? So that's part of the reason why they're going over all the things that they're going over in the first place. And they're going to allow some people to come in and participate in, some level of hearsay within the proceedings, right? But that's where it's at right now, is they're trying to figure out what's what, right? So to pretend like the court as of right now is some arbiter of what is allowed and what is not allowed is just it's patently untrue, because right now they're going through the motions of finding out what can be used and what cannot be used, right? And not only that, but also providing some level of testimony that maybe they can lean into later on in the trial, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it will be explored. It just means that they're allowing it for now because maybe it might be relevant later in the future, right?
Asking how you get to the inference that even if you dispute that piece of evidence, that means patsy. I'm looking for the logical chain for how you get to that inference.
I mean, and this is the trap, right? Is like, I can see it from both sides, right? Like I can see the argument of like, how do we create the logical uh stepping stones to get to, Tyler Robinson as a patsy, right? But at the same time, I think, and this is the thing, I think he's thinking that they're in a position that's further ahead. And I think Candace Owens, I don't even think she's at that literal stage as of yet, right? Where she's piecing everything together. I think more or less like what she's doing right now is she's going over the inconsistencies and everything else and saying, well, there is the potentiality for nefarious actors. There's the potentiality for corruption. There's, and not only that, but I mean, you also, and here's the thing too, this is what annoys me, is when people are like, well, your anecdotal experience, and it's like, okay, listen, like, I know that you probably read this like on the back of like box of Cracker Jacks or whatever, like I get it, right? Like you think anecdotal experiences cannot be like validating bits and pieces that you would use as evidence in an argument, right? Um, and I just think that that's not true, right? Like everybody's going to have personal experiences in their life, and you can't discount those personal experiences to try to say, um, well, you can't use that in the argument. And my question is, well, why can't you use that in the argument? Why can't you use your personal experience, right? Like if we're arguing about my personal experience, why can't I use my personal experience? Like that's a stupid ass position to hold. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like you're literally saying that I can't do the thing that we're here to do. You know what I mean? Um, and it's again, it's typically I see that sort of stuff from like a position of hubris and like the especially for whatever reason like progressive leftists just love to use that, and I know most of that probably has to do with like views on collectivism, um and I think that that's potentially a part of it, right? But the thing is like most people are not most people want to pretend like they're participating in some like grand college level PhD thesis where they're having to debate the merits of their ideas back and forth on like a peer reviewed study or something, right? Like this is just banter back and forth. This is an armchair debate. Like it's not that serious. You know what I mean? Like you can't come at me and tell me that this is some master level debate when it's not even a debate to begin with. I mean, it's literally just a conversation that was painted to be a debate because they didn't understand that they couldn't have a debate because it's from the position of proving a negative, right?
Didn't say it equals Patsy. I think it is enough evidence that it should be explored.
The claim was there's a 0% chance Tyler Robinson did this. This
In her opinion.
is not over whether or not you can explore this or that.
It is plausible that somebody just took his gun and put it there.
Now, I mean, if you want to argue that her opinion is coming from a place of mental illness, like we can explore that, I guess, but I wouldn't even go as far as to say that. You know what I mean? I mean, I've seen people that like get lost in the weeds on things all the time. And sometimes it's like you're just, sometimes you're just going through a rough patch in life. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I mean, she says that somebody came out and said something about like the French Foreign Legion or something coming after her or whatever. Um, I don't even know what the hell that is, but I mean, if there is merit and there is truth to that, I can see how that would stress her out and maybe like, you know, maybe she, as a way of coping with that, like is hyper focused on this like Charlie Kirk thing in a weird way and it's skewed her perspective in some way. Like, okay, maybe, but I mean, also at the same time, I don't really see her making. And this is the fun part about this, is that every now and then throughout the debate, I'm seeing like Andrew Wilson, who's like, "Well, you made this claim," and then she's like, "No, I never made that claim. Like I'm I'm I am speculating on this, that, or whatever, or I'm pointing out, this like little discrepancy that doesn't really make sense or whatever, right? Um, but in terms of claims, she really hasn't made that many claims. Like she's more or less just been there trying to like kind of poke holes at things and see like what I would say see what sticks and what doesn't stick, right? And that's more or less what it feels like. It feels like she's poking and prodding at the potential of some of these weird gray areas where it seems like there is a discrepancy that's like, okay, well, like for instance, I mean, in the debate she brings up like the steakhouse thing and then like the receipt and all that, and it's like, right, like that stuff hasn't been verified yet, but if true, I mean, that's, how could Tyler Robinson be eating at a steakhouse 3 hours away when the crime was supposedly committed? You know what I mean? Um, you know, if you're gonna sit back and tell me like, well, maybe it wasn't Tyler Robinson, maybe it was a Fed who stole his identity and was trying to secretly assassinate Charlie Kirk and succeeded, and meanwhile Tyler Robinson is again 3 hours away eating at a steakhouse somewhere, like cool. Like once we can verify that receipt, then we can discuss that further. But as of right now, like there's no verification, there's no anything, right? We have to wait for like the court to go through things and decide whether or not that's even something they want to talk about, which they may not. They may just want to throw it out.
That's it.
That's it? Then how are you getting to Patsy?
If
This
there's
is the
100
state's
other
evidence,
plausible
and they're inferring.
explanations in Candace, why is it that we should go with this idea that it was a patsy?
I'm not saying that we should go with the idea that it was a patsy. I am saying that there is.
Oh, I thought that was the whole defense, your whole claim
No,
today.
my whole.
See, and this is what I was talking about. It's not even, she didn't even make that claim. Like, and he's making the inference that she did make the claim, and it's like, no, that's not what happened. Like, she's not making any inference. She's speculating that there is, more evidence pointing in one way than the other. You know what I mean? At least in her opinion, right? Which her opinion could be wrong. Like I said, like I'm not, I mean, who the hell am I? I'm not psychic. I don't know what anybody, is going through or whatever, right?
Whole claim was that there is more evidence that he has set up as a patsy.
How does that equal evidence of patsy?
I don't know how many times I can say this.
That's a valid.
No, I mean, and she was right to say that at that point, which is like how, like, she just explained it to you and you're still hung up on this position of like, how can you infer this line of logic from this? And it's like, she's not saying that it is that thing. She's saying that there's more evidence pointing to that thing than pointing the other direction, right? At least in her opinion, right? Now, if you wanted to get down to that, you should have phrased your, wording a little bit better.
Good question. And the response he continues to get is, I can't understand it for you, Andrew. I can only explain it to you. Explain what?
And again, too, like you have to keep in mind, she doesn't owe him any explanation, right? Like she's on the uphill of this battle. He's on the lower part of the hill. He's having to march upwards to meet her because again, it's from a position of trying to prove a negative.
Whenever we're dealing with logic and we're dealing with making a logical inference, we're going to take the entire collaboration of evidence and then we're going to make inferences from that. You would do that with any type of logical proposition. Otherwise, you could never have a true or false claim.
But you just told me I couldn't.
So
do
when
that.
that never happened. You're just making stuff up.
That's not.
No, I mean, and this is why I was speculating about like the nicotine addiction, because that's the thing. Is like Andrew Wilson has this thing where like he just, I don't know for sure, but it just seems like it. It seems like he gets annoyed and he wants a cigarette and he knows he can't go out and smoke, and he's like just fiending really bad, so he's just being like dismissive and kind of being a dick for no reason.
Saying you can't make inferences. He's just saying your inference doesn't add up to Patsy. It doesn't.
Right. And again, she's not making the inference necessarily that that's where she's heading with it. She's saying that inference, that if you wanted to make the argument from her position, there is more, not necessarily evidence, but there's just more stuff in general in her mind pointing to something else other than Tyler Robinson, like everything happening the way that the feds say that it was happening.
Makes sense. That's all he's saying. He's not saying you can't think.
So I asked you how, with the inference you made, you got to the conclusion.
Okay, so I would like to know how you got to the conclusion. And I'm just going to throw it right back at you because
Yeah,
for some
that's
reason
fair.
you permit yourself to do it. And that's what I'm demonstrating is that you permit yourself to do it.
Mhm.
And then you say, when I do it, it's a conspiracy.
But what about Andrew Wilson's inference does not make sense? Confession, gun found, DNA.
So, I mean, and this is where the discrepancies come in, right? Like when you understand where the court's coming in from, like how these sort of trials like shake out and like the steps involved, then you kind of start to understand like there are some definite holes in their story on the side of, Tyler Robinson definitely did do this thing, right? Like there's some pretty big holes uh that really should be explored, right? And I'm saying this not as somebody who feels like there's like one side of the argument has to win. I'm saying this as someone who just genuinely would prefer a pursuit of justice in the truth, right? Like and this is the thing, I don't think that this debate was even necessarily productive because I feel like the debate itself wasn't done from a perspective of trying to find truth and justice. It was essentially a way for Andrew Wilson to come in and kind of smear Candace Owens. And I think, even to a degree, Candace Owens saw that and then took this as an opportunity to in turn smear him. So, um, you know, and what's the downside of that? Well, when you have a shit flinging contest, you know, everybody gets covered in shit. So that's usually how that works out.
Security footage, inference. Which one of those doesn't make sense?
If you're asking for my inference, why I think it's Tyler Robinson's, because Tyler Robinson said in his text messages, you'll be able to see me on security footage at the campus. Said it in his own messages. On top of that, twigs, yes, you can pull them up if you want to fact check that. He did say. On
Yeah, I
top
would.
of
I'm
that,
sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, all of this is coming from the assumption, like, and this is another thing. It's like this is the irony of talking about inferences, right? So, like you're sitting here saying, "Oh, well, he definitely did say these things," but he didn't. Those were text messages, and as Candace goes to point out, I mean, those text messages could be faked. You know what I mean? I have a little thing on for my phone. Like I could log in online on the website and I can send text messages from there, right? Like now, I mean, if you're gonna ask me, isn't that a bit sophisticated? But and I would agree that sounds like a little overly sophisticated. There's a lot of room for error in that, right? Like you know, potentially getting your IP traced, for sending a text message and, all sorts of things, right? Like there's a lot of weirdness in that, right? And it seems like it would be harder to believe than just to believe what happened, right? But that's not to say that it couldn't happen and that there isn't the potential for it to have happened. So again, like I'm not even in a position where I would toss out whether or not, you know, any of those things are true. I mean, here's a perfect example of this, right? Here's if you paid attention to the Carmelo Anthony case, right? Um, if you remember correctly, I believe he was charged with second degree murder, and just recently it came out that they went through his text messages and they found in his text messages where he's like bragging to his girlfriend about how he's gonna, shank somebody or whatever, and lick the blade and all this sick stuff. Those text messages turn second degree murder into first degree murder, and in some states you can even be charged for capital murder, which means you're eligible for the death penalty, right? So it's kind of a big deal, right? And text messages can be damning. So who knows? I mean, maybe the text messages were false, maybe they were fabricated, maybe they weren't fabricated, and maybe everything just happened the way that it happened, right? But in my opinion, at least, like I said, it's too soon to tell, right? And until we start getting into the actual court case and seeing what's the evidence, how was the evidence handled, how was, what's the chain of custody like, things like that, then you can get into the weeds of like, is this actual evidence or is this just hearsay or, you know whatever, right?
Actually think I really did miss that. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
I don't remember him saying you're going to see me in.
Yeah, I'm
in footage.
paraphrasing.
Can
but
we
it was
pull that
close to
up?
it.
Yeah,
If
I
you
don't-
may
I feel-
have
I
it.
think
If you
that's
have it,
not
we can
right.
pull it.
Right there, she said, yeah, I don't think that's right.
It was me. Look at the pictures from the surveillance footage. It was me. Okay. I literally said to you, it's not an oof. I said I didn't remember this, and I'm happy to have a fact check on that. Okay. I didn't call for the fact check saying you're wrong. I literally said I
Okay.
don't remember that.
Well, rewind, but whatever.
Okay.
So when we're talking about the messages themselves, they seem totally valid. I have no idea why they wouldn't be valid. And I have not heard any good explanation for why it is that these messages should even be questioned.
Parking aside the intuition of just something feels wrong here, which you should follow your intuition.
But it has to be tempered with logic, reason, explanatory power, and evidence, not just intuition.
That's why we're parking it aside. Intuition's the first step.
But we don't get to the second step. She just continues to talk about intuition.
Nobody came in.
And this is actually a fair point. Like, in my opinion, this is a fair point. Like, and this did happen during the debate, she kind of just got hung up in the weeds of like, her gut reaction. And, I'll be the first to tell you, I've had some gut reactions that did not work out in my favor, right? So, I mean, just because your gut reaction tells you to do something doesn't mean it's right, right? And to a degree, Andrew Wilson is correct. I mean, you should use every bit of information that you have to make sure that you're making the right decision, right? Because by not doing that, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, right? So, yeah, like I can totally understand where he's coming from in that, right? So, like I said, I think this whole thing isn't even a debate. I think it's just debating opinion and speculation, and I don't think you can say anybody's right or wrong because we're not in a position yet to measure any of these things to say whether or not somebody can be held right or wrong for their opinion. And even then, it's an opinion. You're allowed to be wrong. You know what I mean? Like, so it's stupid to even like what's this you know what I mean? It would be like me making a $300,000 bet on, being Mr. Perfect or something and like never making any like errors in judgment or anything throughout my life. That would be not only incredibly stupid, that would be like and this is the problem I have with this. It's like you're coming in to say, well, you're not allowed to make a mistake. When, I mean, that's kind of the whole struggle of living life, right? The struggle of living life is that you're going to make mistakes and then you're going to learn from those mistakes, right? Like that's usually how that works.
Medium, right? No one came in like there were some interesting aspects. This was a little suspect. But I do think it's enough to go to trial. They all came in like they were passing away and we're going to die from being
Well, they're
overwhelmed.
trusting their intuition.
Okay.
I guess we still haven't parked it. All right.
Parking that aside. Parking
Okay.
aside just a general intuition that sometimes might be second messages.
What did she just say?
Could there be someone who logged into his Discord? Could there be someone who logged in to his Apple?
I mean, it's possible. Do we have any evidence indicating that?
George could be sending text messages right now. We are married. He has every login that I have. And remember, he's up for a death sentence.
So there's room for doubt. Andrew even says that himself. That's totally fine.
That discovery was not met by the time we got to preliminary hearing. So
Yeah, I mean, and that's the funny part is like they're both arguing the exact same thing. It's just they're so hyped up from their little circle, that they don't really see that they're both arguing the same point.
I remain unconvinced by these text messages. Just as you feel convinced by them, I feel unconvinced by them.
Okay.
Remaining unconvinced is different than saying there's a 0% chance he pulled the trigger.
No, there's a 0% chance that he pulled the trigger in her opinion, right? Like that's what you're running on. You're running on it being her opinion. Like not it's not she's not stating it as fact. She's stating it as like in her opinion. You see what I'm saying? Like there's a in her opinion, she is placing bets on the conspiracy over the currently accepted narrative that Tyler Robinson did what he did. And I think that's what Warren is not understanding is that we're talking about the difference between fact and reality and speculation. And right now we are in speculation mode, not facts and reality mode.
That's convinced. What convinced you?
We never get to the thing that I am disputing.
Well, I was just providing an answer. We were coming back in from a break.
It didn't look like she wanted to have a debate. She just needed to make it through this thing. And she's very good at that.
Because that's all she had to do. She just had to make it through because that was literally the whole point of the $300,000. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's I think you're not really quite understanding or appreciating the fact that she had the high ground this entire debate, and all she had to do was like just carefully watch her words and you know stick to the fact that she thinks that she's allowed to have opinions, right? um and when you come in from Andrew Wilson's position and then you're having to prove yourself against that, well, like, who the fuck are you to say that she can't have an opinion? You know what I mean? Like, again, you're coming at this from like a losing perspective. Like, you're coming at this from like, and if anything, this is a perspective that makes you look horrible, right? Like, and this is what I'm going to say. I don't think Andrew Wilson's a bad person. I really don't. I think this dude has been huffing his own cheeks for a very long time because he does like internet blood sport debate crap, debate me bro crap. And he's never run into another person like Candace who has been around this debate me bro bull crap a lot longer than he has. Because you have to keep in mind, she used to work with Ben Shapiro, who's like the king of talking so fast nobody can understand anything, and then by the time you find a way to articulate your position he's already dismissed you, right? Like, that's Ben Shapiro's entire MO when it comes to debate. And it's very evident, like, especially if you go back and you look at the older videos. And it's funny because I used to be one of those people, right? It's like, oh, he owned that the Trigley puff and blah blah blah, or whatever, right? Like, you know it was funny back in the day, but now as an adult I look back on it and I'm like, that's silly. Like, you're going to a conference where you've spent the last 6 months researching your position, right? You've dug yourself into this position, and now you've walked into like a conference and you've told people, well, prove me wrong. And it's like, okay. And then when everybody's like, I just got here 5 minutes ago, hold on, let me think about my position. And then they end up in a position where they can't even articulate their own position because they haven't had 6 months of prep time for they're thinking through their position. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. Like, you're putting it's like those stupid things that you would see on TV where they're like, oh, can you name 5 presidents of the United States? And then there's like some bimbo eating ice cream who's probably hasn't had a thought run through her head in the last 24 hours. You know what I mean? She's just been on autopilot. and now you're trying to like wake her from the matrix and be like, hey, name 5 presidents of the United States, and you put her on the spot. Like, of course she's not going to be able to answer you. You know what I mean? Like, that's, it's a stupid. Not only is it like a stupid argument, but you're just fluffing up your own ego, and at the end of the day, uh, you know, it's a David and Goliath situation with your own ego, right? Like, eventually somebody's going to sling a rock, hit you in your eye, and knock you on your ass, right? If you have an inflated ego, it happens 10 out of 10 times, right? Um, just, that's at least from my own personal experience, right? Like, it's good to ego check yourself and make sure that you're not coming in from a position of being overly egotistical, right?
Here's the questions that I have.
Wait, before we get into that, I would like to just reply to that. So just to be clear, we agreed to debate our claims, and then I agreed publicly that I have no issues having a conversation with you about other things that I've discussed that were outside of the court hearing and things like other evidence that's come across our lap and things that we've been speaking about. But I just do want to make it clear to viewers that for whatever reason you think that you have a right to sort of depose me.
I'm not deposing you. I just want to ask you some questions.
She's walking a tightrope here. She's not trying to argue that her claim is more viable than Andrew's.
Because you kept saying I'm Joe Rogan.
Again, she doesn't have to, right? She's not trying to. She doesn't have to argue anything. I mean, he's literally the one that came in with the position of, well, I have to prove that you were a schizo and everything that you said was a lie. Like, that's his claim coming into this. So your claim is an uphill battle. Like, and especially if you're debating somebody who, what you're effectively doing is putting claims in their own mouth, and you're creating this sort of like straw man through a debate. Like, it's a stupid asinine position that you've put yourself in. And in my opinion, that's why he lost the debate. I think he lost the debate. Andrew Wilson definitely lost the debate. It was a stupid position for him to put himself in. And it, not only that, but with a bet of $300K, I mean, dude, if you want to do any more of these like really dumb debates, hit me up. I can use the money.
They have no evidence. They have no evidence. And now you're like, let's move away from the evidence. Let's talk about transcendentals.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
Candace makes a good argument that, hey, I'm just coming to my own conclusions. I'm just thinking independently.
So
yeah, and I mean that's literally it. Like, why can't she do that? You know what I mean? And it's her platform. She's allowed to do whatever she wants. And let's say she turns out completely incorrect and this whole thing blows up in her face and destroys her platform. Okay, well, that's something she's going to have to accept.
why are you so upset when people say they don't find it
if
convincing?
that was the limitation of the claims that you made, if it was just, wait a second, there's a little bit of problems. There's some problems in this case that I have questions for that I want answers to.
That was literally her position.
Nobody have a problem, actually. At least of all me.
No, the reason he had the problem is because he got butthurt and upset about it, and then he decided to mouth off on Joe Rogan about it.
The people who have their minds made up will likely attack even me for saying this, and that's okay though. What is the alternative? I'm not going to compromise on logic itself.
A lot of this.
No, for sure, and I don't think anybody should, right? Like, I think logic is important, but I think it's also important to understand that just because there's multiple positions at play doesn't necessarily invalidate any particular line of logic, especially when you're looking at it from an early position where you're sort of just crafting the theory, right? Like you're not really dedicated or hard set on the idea of the theory, but so far it seems like there are things that are leaning in that direction. So maybe it's worth exploring, right? I mean, and I think that's literally what this is two people arguing over, well, I'm exploring idea X, and the other person's like, well, I'm exploring idea Y, and I think you're wrong, and neither one can really quite articulate why the other is wrong, right? It's more so just feelings based thing, and then not only that, but you have people that are just like willy nilly making claims that neither one necessarily made. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like I said, I feel like the whole thing was just kind of BS.
Conjecture that's based on literally nothing, that leads from no inferences whatsoever. Like you couldn't even infer it logically.
Like, I mean, for real though, if you want to toss like 300K to the wind next time, hit your boy up, you know, um, I could, just saying, it's been a little rough lately.
That's the problem. The problem has never been whether or not you just said, there's not enough in this case so far until we get to the trial. I remain unconvinced. I'm sure there's tons of people who remain unconvinced yet until we get to the trial. I think that's fine. I think it's fine. There's people who are
I don't think anybody should be convinced of anything until we get to the trial. I mean, that's a stupid position to hold, right? Like, to sit back and think like, well, I have all of this that says this, you know what I mean? And then you're just kind of running on like a bunch of he said, she said, just effectively hearsay and speculation. You know what I mean? Like, you can have all the hearsay and speculation you want. It doesn't make something true, right? And to be perfectly honest, at the end of the day, to even take this a step further, to be perfectly 100% honest, the only person that really knows what Tyler Robinson did is Tyler Robinson, right? I mean, you could have all the security footage you want. Um, and I'll even say this: I find it weird in a day and age where we have 4K cameras like everywhere, right? Why is it every time we see Tyler Robinson in a video footage, it looks like Bigfoot fleeing the scene? You know what I mean? That's weird. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of weird things about this that don't really make sense, right? And I think you should be allowed to ask questions about that, right? Like, that's kind of weird, right? Um, the rifle, the calibering, the well, they said this and then later they changed their story to say this. There's a lot of that in this. And unfortunately, like, I think that's part of it, is that this case in particular is so like convoluted and complex and everything else. I'm having a hard time buying everything, especially like, the whole narrative of like Charlie Kirk having a neck of steel. You know what I mean? Like, apparently not. You know what I mean? Like, if you have a neck of steel, it's not gonna, you know, wouldn't a bullet just deflect right off your neck? You know what I mean? But obviously you know, that's sensationalizing the story, right? And both sides are going to do that to some degree, and also to make this like the argument of like, well, your opinion shouldn't matter because you're making money or whatever, right? Well, I mean, if that's the situation, consider me the arbiter of this conversation, I guess, because I'm broke ass poor and I'm making no money off of this. So, uh, but ultimately, at the end of the day, like, everybody's going to be making some degree of money, right? Like, Andrew Wilson's going to make some money. I'm sure he's going to gain some fans and some following. If this isn't like completely like obliterated his career, uh, Candace, it's going to do the same thing. TPUSA, it's going to do the same thing. Like, everybody's making some degree of money because they all have organizations that have a stake in this conversation, right? Like, that's just the way it is. So to pretend like you're in the moral wrong for making money while having this conversation is, to me, it's irrelevant, right? Like, this whole, I will say this, like, there was a point where like Tim Pool came out and he was just really butthurt about this whole Candace Owens thing, and it's like, dude, honestly, it's like, imagine if I was that upset about you and your chicken show. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever, right? Like, I don't know. I don't watch Tim Pool. I haven't watched him in years, right? But what I'm saying is like imagine I got upset at Tim Pool because, he's got a chicken show and, um, I don't know, like it is his chicken shows causing the price of chicken to go up, or I don't know. It's the argument in my head, like when I hear the whiny complaints of Temple, are, I mean, it just kind of causes me to be annoyed, because it's, if anything, it's seems like it's coming more or less from a place of jealousy, right? Like that, oh cool, like Tim Pool had to bust his ass to get where he is, and it's like, yeah, like, okay, like, can't you just be proud of the fact that you put in a lot of hard work to build yourself up and to build your platform up? Like, I just don't, I don't get it. You know what I mean? Like, why are you so upset that you earned something? You know what I mean? And not only that, like, how is anything that Candace has built for herself, like, how is that pertinent to you? You know what I mean? I don't know. This is like a bit of a different tangent, but I just, in my opinion, it's Tim Pool being upset about Candace Owens is like, I'm over that. Like, I could care less. You know what I mean? It just seems like whenever Tim Pool has a problem, it's based on somebody else's success. You know what I mean? And why can't other people be successful? You know what I mean? Like, why do you have to tear other people down? You know what I mean? Even if you disagree with it, right? Like imagine if we held the same standard to like TYT and CNN and all these other organizations, right? Like, would you want to live in a world where you can no longer content farm TYT? Like, I mean, that dude's got like the worst takes on the entire internet, right? Like, and not only that, I mean, he's just like he's a lolcow. You know what I mean? Like, if you're ever running a little low on money, like, all you have to do is just look at their latest episode and then laugh, chuckle, point, and call him an idiot, right? Like, that's really all you have to do, if that's really what you want to do, right? Like, I mean, it's an infinite content farm when it comes to TYT, right? Um, but I mean, that's what I'm saying, is like, I feel like really what this comes down to is, this is more of like an approach of a debate of from a position of ego. And I feel like if people had just checked their ego ahead of time and realized, okay, well, can you tell me, like, are you simply just speculating and having an opinion? Like, I feel like this could have all been wrapped up with just that question, right? Like, oh, okay, this is just speculation and opinion. Okay, cool. Like, and then you just move on with your day, right? Because having opinions is okay. You know what I mean? Um, and I mean, there's a difference, right? Like, if she was like rounding up a mob to go get, Tyler Robinson or something, like that, then maybe it's different, right? But as of right now, it's just being speculation and opinion. Like, I just don't have a problem. Like, even if it's outrageous, like, just because it's outrageous doesn't mean that it can't exist, right? Especially if you're looking at this from like a free speech perspective, right? Um, which is the way I tend to look at everything, right? I look at everything from a, like like whenever somebody makes an argument where they're like, "Oh, look at this criminal who has a gun, who hurt somebody," and then they try to use that position as like well, see, this is why we can't allow everyday people to be armed and to defend themselves. And it's like, no, that's the opposite, right? Like, the opposite is true. If anything, the fact that there are criminals out there with firearms is an indication, an even bigger indication, of why you should be armed and why you should train and make sure that you're capable of self-defense. Because you never know when you'll be in a position where somebody might come to you and, try to hurt you, or your family, and you have a duty and an obligation to protect yourself and your family, right? So to make any argument otherwise is just stupid. And it's well, I guess I can't say the word on YouTube, but it's a, self-deleting empathy, right? Where you're empathizing with the criminal, you know what I mean? And that's in and of itself is stupid. I feel like if you're a criminal and you're knowingly putting other people in a position where they're going to be harmed for your gain, then, when you face the consequences of that, nobody should feel bad about it.
Convinced too. That's never been my problem. My problem is the claims which are external to that.
She got Andrew
By the way, like I love the upkey music, like we're having a very sentimental moment here, right?
on the ropes in that one interaction, being able to recall the 7 counts, though it's not that relevant to who actually killed Charlie Kirk. That's the thing about facts and logic. It's either there or it isn't. You can attack the credibility. You can try and embarrass. It's
Like this is the kind of music you would hear when House has an epiphany, right? When he's like about to solve a medical case. This is that sort of melody.
truck driver can put forth logic. A professor can fail to put forth logic, but that was well played on her part. Beyond that, I'm not seeing much. How are you 100% sure that Tyler Robinson did not pull the trigger? And that's the claim.
Well, I mean, I don't want to repeat myself again, but basically that is my opinion. My opinion of this whole thing is that it wasn't a debate. It wasn't like, just because you hold a position doesn't mean you can't hold that position. Like even if other people view that as like the wrong opinion, like, you know what I mean? And if anybody's going to be this invested in it, it's going to be Candace Owens, right? Like that's part of it, right? Like that's her buddy, that's her bestie that got gunned down, right? So she's going to be the one that's going to be hyper invested in this, and I hope I got friends that are willing to go the same extra mile, right? Um, if something like that were to happen to me, right? But I mean, I'm all for exhausting all possibilities, right? And doing that in the pursuit of justice and truth, to me, feels like the right thing, right? And it doesn't matter. And here's the thing: I don't think Erica Kirk is like a horrible human being. I'm gonna just be honest with you. I don't think Erica Kirk was prepared for everything that was about to happen when Charlie Kirk was shot. I don't think she had like the capacity to understand how everything was going to play out and how to sort of avoid taking these punches, right? I want to say I think a lot of it has to do as a miscommunication, but also as like a, I think there is also ego in play on that side too, where I think both sides are looking at each other as a potential enemy and not understanding that I think they both have the same common goal, but like there are a lot of like weird inconsistencies when analyzing like Erica Kirk, right? But and one of the things that we're not hearing from the other side, which I mean, if I was TPUSA and I wanted to farm content, I would dig into Candace Owens. There's a lot of things in her history that are sketchy, right? Like the doxing website thing and all that sort of stuff from way back in the day, right? You know, there's a lot of things that you could talk about. Like there's a lot of things that you could dig up on both sides, right? And you know, TPUSA wanting to turn the other cheek in that regard, I mean, maybe that says something about their character, right? Maybe they're not here to run a smear campaign against Candace. I don't know. I haven't really looked into the TPUSA side. Again, I'm not like hyper religious or anything. Um, even from my perspective, like as an atheist, like it just, the whole religious aspect of things, like I've dealt with enough of it through my life to more or less kind of approach things from like an agnostic perspective, right? Like, I don't feel like, I'll be honest with you, I don't feel like God does exist. But in that same breath, like, I'm okay with being wrong, right? Like, I'm not out here trying to prove God. Like, I don't have a vendetta against God. I just, to be honest with you, like, I just kind of feel like when you die, you die, and that's it. You know what I mean? And I think there's a certain poetic nature to that where you have a certain appreciation for life at that point because, you know, at a certain point there's not going to be a tomorrow, right? So, you know, and I think that that kind of sort of perspective is helpful, right? Like, and I think that's why it's important to chase your, like, what you want to achieve in life, right? And that's why you should do the best at everything that you can do, right? Like, and when I say that, I mean, like, like, even though it sucks going to work and working a 9 to 5, when you're at work working that 9 to 5, you should be doing the best you can, right? Whether that's sorting spices on a uh, one of those manufacturing belts or something, or you know, I don't, whatever it is, like whether it's the packaging process, or, you know, maybe you build bicycles for a living, or, you know, maybe you sell cars at a car dealership, right? Like, you should always do the best that you can. And that's always been one way that I've approached things too. When I worked at Best Buy, I always try to do my best to make sure that people were informed, you know. So like, if I had, like, if I was working in computers and we had a laptop that had like a really high return rate for some reason, I would always tell people, I'm like, dude, that laptop, no bueno. Like we sell them, but we get them coming back into the store more often than not. You know, and you know, I was usually pretty good about informing people, like, on what topics or on what products work long term, you know what I mean, and what you're going to get like the most bang for your buck for, right? um you know, and I would even go as far as to say, like, I would even tell some customers, you know, like, they would ask about the black tie protection, and I'd be like, yeah, I mean, you already have a warranty, like, and I'm just going to be honest with you, right? Like, you already have a warranty on the item, right? Now the question is, do you want to deal with the warranty, or do you want us to deal with the warranty? That's what the black tie protection is. Like, if anybody says any different, they're wrong. Like, unless black tie has been updated since I worked there, which I don't think it has. Like, even Walmart today has like the same thing, the protection thing or whatever, for whatever it is that they sell, right? It's the same thing. It's just the convenience of, well, I can walk into the store and effectively give them the item, and then they can return it for me, and I can get one that works in return, right? So, um you know, but anyways, man, this video is going on for quite a while. I think we're at like almost an hour and 30 minutes. So I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna end it here. I'm probably gonna break this video into chunks, and then
Little did he know, he would not in fact break this video up into chunks. He instead uploaded this video as a whole piece so he could later farm it for clips. Because Liberty Music Ray ain't no sucker, and it's time he gets paid the big money as an internet master debater. He would eventually go on to master debate the internet so hard that eventually his own following would rise up against him. This was known as the Intergalactic Master Debater Wars, where debaters acted as internet oligarchs whose PhD-level theses combined into a super-intelligent AI that farmed the stupid pink skins and turned them into batteries. Not because they were effective at storing energy, but because they were annoying and zapping them brought the machines much joy.
you know, put it out there in parts or whatever. I know a lot of you probably are not like into the long form stuff or whatever, but I felt like I kind of had to do this video. And it is a longer conversation, you know what I mean? Like, I hate when people like rush through things and you know, they're like, get to the point and hurry up, you know, and it's like, okay, like, listen, just chill, calm down, it's okay, right? Like, you know, like, take a breather, slow it down, you know what I mean? It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Like, let's take our time, let's analyze things and make sure that we do things right. That's always been my position throughout my life. You can rush things and then fuck it all up, or you can take your time and make sure you do it right. And you should always take your time and make sure you do it right, especially if it's something that you're taking pride in, right? Um, you know, when you rush things, you know, once you've rushed something, it's if it's bad, it's going to be forever bad, right? Because that's going to be everybody's first impression of it. So, you know, I'm not trying to start like a Joe Rogan 2.0 show. You know, I don't want to do like a 6 hour long podcast every day, but you know, I feel like, you know, taking the time to explore everything and make sure that we're having the proper conversation and doing everything the right way makes sense, right? Um, so anyways, if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Thank you for watching, and hopefully we will catch you in the next one. Take it easy, everybody.